All right, thank you for joining us. I am Dave Brock, chair of the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party and substitute host for our podcast, Cuyahoga Today. And I am today joined by two lovely young people, Donte Jones and Sylvia Snow-Rackley. And Donte, tell us a little bit. You are both students at Tri-C.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit, Donte, about you, a 20-second introduction if you can.
Okay, well, thank you for that introduction, Brock. I'm a student at Tri-C East. I'm also serving as student government president, and I'm an English major, and as you already stated, a democracy fellow as well.
Right.
So my hopes for the future are to stay civically engaged and affect positive change in my community, whether that's as a representative in our government or as somebody working for the actual decision makers who work in that capacity.
Okay.
Whatever the future has for me, I'm here for it.
That's awesome. So simple. You just want to change the world. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
For the better,
you
right?
got
Yeah,
it. You
very
caught
simple.
me.
Yeah, right. Okay, Sylvia, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar on the last part. I'm a second year at Tri-C. I'm an urban studies major.
Oh, cool.
Hopefully go to CSU after I transfer. And yeah, just I don't know exactly what I want to do, but wherever I want to go, I want to stay involved in the community and be a community organizer and change maker.
Oh, that's fantastic. Cleveland State has one of the best urban affairs colleges in the country, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's great. So we talked, Donte, you said Democracy Fellows. I think you're both Democracy Fellows.
Yep.
What exactly is that program, and what does that mean to be a Democracy Fellow from Tri-C?
I'm glad you asked that question, Brock.
Yeah.
Democracy Fellow, it means a lot. We are representatives of not only our school, but the surrounding community. And we work under the umbrella with Campus Vote Project, but under that umbrella, but as a separate entity. And we work in correlation with our government relations department, our wonderful director, Katie Montgomery.
Yes.
And we seek to educate not only the student body at our school, but the surrounding community in regards to voting, what that looks like, educating them as far as the process from beginning to end, and we encourage that civic engagement.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. And how did you feel the same way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was it's hard to beat that
no
definition.
kidding,
Yeah,
right?
essentially we're, educators on all things voting. We're essentially peer educators working in the community with the students who are on our level, and just getting that message out there.
Did you find growing up, Sylvia, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Cleveland Heights.
Okay. Did you find yourself at a young age drawn to being engaged in the community? You looked around the community where you lived, or what inspired this, and maybe when did it start?
It's interesting. I think I'm lucky enough to grow up in like a very engaged community. I think Cleveland Heights is very active and vocal on a lot of issues and community issues. And I know specifically the way Cleveland Heights works and a lot of Ohio schools work is you have a school levy every year. And because of that, a lot of the students are just involved because every year your school and how it gets funded is on the line. So every year I go out there with my friends and talk about the school levy to people. And I think from then on, it just kind of grew into how can I be involved in the community? What are issues we care about?
Right on. And do you take most of your classes downtown, or where do you take
I'm at the Metro campus.
At the Metro. And Donte, where are you at mostly?
I'm at East Campus.
In Highland Hills, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, great. And how about you? Did you, at a young age, say, boy, I really want to do something, be a part of bettering the community? And did that come to you at a very young age, or how did that happen?
It didn't, Brock. Interesting enough, I was kind of on the fence and skeptical about things, much like the attitudes of a lot of people, including our young people, in today's age. And it wasn't until I had the opportunity to become a Democracy Fellow and serve my community and see the process that I realized that this is something I wanted to be involved in. And that's when I really stepped up my engagement as a result of serving in this position.
So going to Tri-C has really opened your eyes in many ways to what's going on.
Absolutely. The saying that we have, the Tri-C slogan is "Where your futures begin."
I've seen it.
It's absolutely true. You would have asked me a year ago, I'd be like, oh, I don't know about that, but it sounds a little corny, but it's absolutely true and it's relevant.
That's right.
And I know it's affected the pathway of my life, and I'm sure if anybody was to engage with this fine institution, their lives would be affected in a positive direction as well. well.
That's right. And we'll get, for those who don't know, today is the first day of early voting. And and there is something on the ballot, and I voted today, early voted.
Thank you.
And voted in favor of issue 5. I don't know if we'll have to cut this out, but I'm saying it now.
Okay, all
we'll
right.
figure it out later. But either way, let's get to the heart of the matter.
Okay.
Young people, meaning 18 to 21-year-olds, have had the right to vote since. Do you know the answer to this, by the way?
1971.
Look at you, very good.
17th Amendment.
Yeah, no.
26th.
26th Amendment. Yeah.
Okay. Forgive me.
No, you're good.
Right. Yeah, 26th Amendment. Richard Nixon was terrified of this because he thought all young people would go out and vote Democratic. And then in 1972, he wins the second biggest landslide ever, right? So the thing for these past 50 years now is youth vote. We're going to get the youth vote. They're going to turn out. That's going to go crazy. And I think in 2008, that was a reality. And both of you were pretty young when Barack Obama did really well with the young vote. But for most of these past 50 years, it's been elusive. And what ideas would you have for motivating people, young people in particular, let's say 30 and younger, to vote?
Sylvia, I'd like to hear your ideas on this.
I think it's complicated. I think it's not just a question of motivation, but also education. There's studies that show 75% of students want to be involved. They want to get more involved, but they just don't know the avenues, and they just don't know what issues affect them. A lot of students, I've heard students say, like Katie said, like, we'd go and grab students, we'd be like, oh, are you registered to vote? And then they'd be like, oh, yeah, haha. And then we'd say, Tri-C's on the ballot this year. And they'd turn around and say, wait a minute, I'm actually not registered to vote. What's on the ballot this year? And so it's an issue of talking to kids and getting them to know their, the avenues that in which they can affect government in their community. And also, just letting them know what's on the ballot, what is changing the community, what's happening.
Good point.
No, that's key. What Sylvia brought up is the absolute component to getting people, especially in that age range, involved. They just need to know how the issues on the ballot affect them on a personal level in their own lives.
Right.
And once they realize that, then they are more likely to become engaged.
Yeah, I think that's good. Did you two get these questions? I was up late the other night in a dimly lit room with one light bulb.
It's a candle.
Advisor, yes, working on these questions. Did you get these ahead of time or no?
I got these, yes,
okay.
but...
Okay, because the one of the cool ones I was going to ask, and something I have found in the little over a year that I've been shared, is I think a lot of us take for granted the how and when and where of voting. But this is a county that is becoming less white every day. There are immigrants moving here. Chris Ronayne is working on that. And some of them just to take for granted this notion that, well, I know how to vote, so everyone must. And that's it. Do you two find that isn't, I think that's sort of what you're alluding to, Donte, is this notion that I don't know how. Like, where do I go to register? What are the? Yep. Do you have any thoughts on this notion? That is, yes. Am I on to something? Am I wrong here, or what?
Oh,
yeah.
You're on the tail of a real issue that needs to be addressed in all communities. Yeah. Education is absolutely a necessity, and we cannot take for granted how many people don't understand the process or who are intimidated by the process, and as a result of that, they tend not to get involved. So first we have to identify these people. We have to educate these communities as it relates to, registering to vote, researching their ballot, going to the resources that can educate them about who's on the ballot and those issues, and then in turn making their vote in an educated way. So Sylvia, wouldn't you agree that a lot of what we do as Democracy Fellows is education wise? You want to expound
for sure.
on that?
I mean, I think that's 90% of it, honestly, is just talking to people. And I think one thing that, like, I took for granted growing up is, like, it's like a generational issue too. Like, my parents taught me how to vote. I didn't learn how to vote in school. There was certainly, like, there was a table at lunch, but there was never a class on here's your avenues on how to vote.
Good point.
And so there's something my parents taught me, and if your parents didn't teach you or you weren't directly connected to those avenues, it just might not be something that you learned.
And can it seem daunting, this notion of voting? Because Maybe it can be because you got to be registered. As we know, the certain factions in this state don't want to make it any easier for people to vote, right? Do you think people find this notion daunting at times? The voting process itself.
I think politics in general, for some people, seems so, like, you talk to people and they're like, I don't even know where to start, where even to get involved. And I think that's part of why we like to add a bit of fun and a little bit of, just toying with the idea, because it can seem really intimidating. Yeah, and when you make it more fun and make it less seem like, this big, heavy weight of a topic, and it can get people a little more willing to be involved.
Gotcha.
Yeah, when you think about this issue, and like Sylvia said, we want to add a little bit of levity to the situation and make it less intimidating for people. Sure. And when they take that time and they go look at some of the fruits of our labor, and they go to Tri-C Votes and Tri-C's page on YouTube, and they look up our Rock the Polls video.
This is a video that we're going to possibly link to, so be ready.
Exactly.
Podcast fans.
And some of the soap operas that we've done that give you a laugh about voting and civic engagement, but also educate you in relation to how you get this done and how to make this less intimidating is a big part of the answer. So I think more organizations need to go ahead and go in that direction.
Yeah. I'm not sure if me dancing is the best way to inspire Democrats in this county but I'm going to look into this and we'll stay in touch on this.
I'd like to see it, bro.
Well, I don't know.
I don't think you should close your mind off to the possibilities.
You're right. So being young people yourself, what are some of the reasons you hear that people say I'm not going to vote, or what are the excuses you sometimes hear? Sylvia, what do you sometimes hear?
There's a lot of different ones. You hear I'm not political. I don't like to be political. And I think that's, once you know the issues, you realize that everything is political in a sense. That what you're voting on is always going to be stuff you're involved in. I hear a lot about people not understanding. A lot of people just don't know there's an election coming up if it's not the presidential election.
That's
and if
true.
it is the presidential election, they're like, I don't really, both parties, same outcome.
Oh, wow.
And so, you hear a lot of different things. And I feel like, again, it stems back to that, just not knowing that there are these very specific issues, not knowing what local issues affect them, not knowing their schools on the ballot this year.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Skepticism is the biggest issue in relation to not engaging in our civic duties and voting as we should, and that's just a lack of knowledge. And I actually work as a poll worker for Cuyahoga Board of Elections, and I know in my experiences, just being there and seeing the process and being a part of that has given me the knowledge that I need to be more confident in our electoral process. And I think a lot of people should maybe take that avenue. If they have some skepticism, get involved. Go ahead and get involved in the civic process. We're hiring at the County Board of Elections.
There you go. And you get paid.
We'd love to have you. Absolutely. A lot of people are under the assumption that we're not getting paid. They say thank you for your service. I say you're welcome, but I am
you take the check.
In fact collecting the check.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right.
Go ahead. I would say one more thing on the note of skepticism. Is I talk to people, and people do have a lot of understandable skepticism with the history of our country and trying to obscure people from voting. And it's a process of trying to gain that trust back and reintegrate people into the system.
Right, because it has become more difficult for people, particularly in the cities, to vote in the state of Ohio. I don't think we can deny that. What can an organization like ours do to appeal to people, not just to get them to vote the way we want them to, but to get them to vote? Are there methods, or do you have ideas? Obviously, if you two had the solutions, you'd bottle them already and would have sold them. But I think this is how thinking out loud and spitballing is how you can get things done. What can an organization like ours do to reach younger people in a more constructive way?
I think, Brock, we have to.
I love the last name too. Brock. Brock, what's happening? We just met 10 minutes ago. But,
yes, exactly. It just sounds so business and serious. I love it. But
all right.
I think I actually think that education. I know I'm going to reiterate this point, but I think what's the word I'm looking for? I'm looking for intentional, repetitive action.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Okay, and when I say that, I mean I think some points that are important enough, as such as this one, need to be hit home repetitively. They need to be reiterated in the minds of those communities that are affected most by these issues. So we have to keep letting people know, that voting is the answer. This is an ongoing fight. It's not new to us. This is something that has went on for our parents' generations and their parents' generations. These freedoms that we have and this democracy that we have is something that we have to fight for continuously to keep. We can't take it for granted.
That's right.
And we have to preserve these rights that our founding fathers put in place for us, and we can't get complacent to the point where we think they can't go away.
Yeah, great point. I mean, as a former history professor, one of the things, and I taught 20th century history, there are young people today who don't have any familial connection with how difficult it was for black people to get the vote in the South, in particular, in the 50s and 60s. Certainly I grew up and had heard stories and still had parents and stuff, but we're 60 years removed from that struggle. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Civil Rights Act of 60. So there is the sense of taking it for granted, but this is something that can be taken away. It can be chipped away, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So did you have a point to add?
Well, I mean, that was amazing.
That was
hard follow-up, but
yeah.
I think one of the more underrated ways of getting to people is that those one-on-one community conversations. It's being in the community, being present with people, being there for the community when they have questions, and just being that force that's always there for them to come and talk to one-on-one. I mean, it's a slow process, but that's how you get through to some people.
Our one-on-one for say an organization like us,
right? Sure.
is a one-on-one. Is it possible for Joe Biden to have a one-on-one,
right? No.
Or for Donald Trump to have a one-on-one with her? No, I mean, right. So I think we know that. But what in repetitive action, I think, is 100% right when it comes to politics. What are some ways to make so? Is social media? I mean, I don't think it's a panacea, but how much can it help? Do you think with young people? Do the two of you see ads on Facebook or Insta or Google or whatever it may be, and do they resonate with you, whether they're political or otherwise? Do the ads like that have any impact?
I think they do. I think us ignoring social media is a mistake that only takes place on the losing party's behalf. In 2008, we saw the grassroots movement that put President Barack Obama into the White House.
That's right.
And that's not a trend that's going away.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is the type of movements that need to be taken advantage of to actually get the people's voice represented within our government systems.
Yeah.
So we have to take social media, but just like we can't ignore it, we have to make sure that we control it and use the narrative in a way that is indicative of the truth and honorable to. We want to speak truth to justice. Sure. And we can't allow it to be hijacked by parties or interests that may not have our collective benefit in mind.
Yeah.
I mean, perfectly said. I have no notes.
No, Sylvia. Please,
modest.
let me ask you, Sylvia, in your experience about social media. I'm sorry, Brock. I don't mean
it's all right.
You're doing the interviewing, but
can you
go ahead? I'm sorry.
Get the mic a little closer. I think.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was going to ask Sylvia about this to expand on the social media aspect of it. And what's your experience like? How do you feel social media affects the political realm today?
I mean, it's hard because so much of it is happening on social media right now, and so many of those conversations are happening where you do want to stay engaged with that community, but it's also it's difficult. I mean, it's constantly changing. It's a really hard line to walk between where you're doing. But yeah, I think like you said, it's important to take advantage of while we're here. Yeah.
How much of a role do you think? And this isn't a fleshed out question necessarily by me, but the cool factor plays. I mean, Barack Obama was cool. Right. John F. Kennedy was cool. That was obviously before all of our time. But President Biden wears cool sunglasses, and his,
that's a plus.
Biden, there aren't how many cool. I mean, do we need a cool factor to get people, young and not young, to vote? Is it necessary today? Because how many people are sitting at home under the age of 30 saying, "Boy, I can't wait to go out and vote for whoever the last two candidates, right, who will probably face each other again. Go ahead, Sylvia. I see
that's
the
a hard
mind.
question.
I know it is. Like I said, it's not
I mean,
fleshed out.
I think it definitely can't hurt ever.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't ever think it should be I think it should it should never be the focus of a campaign to be cool. Right. I think that's something that a lot of people have naturally and or develop over time, and that can be really effective. And we can find people who are charismatic and cool to lead us, but it doesn't have to be the defining factor. I don't think it's always the deciding factor.
Yeah, right. Good point.
I would hope it's not.
No, ideally, you would want the policies to.
Cool is speaking truth to justice. Cool is serving as a representative in our government, and representing the will of the constituents that you serve in the way that they elected you to office to do. So that's what cool is.
Well, I think that's why Bernie Sanders had a significant following. There was cool not because of this guy in his late 70s from Vermont. It was, like you're saying, speaking truth to power. And I think that made him cool, in the parlance of our time. But that's always been something that's fascinated me, too, especially as a former historian. The sort of cult of personality has always fascinated me. So what is making democracy celebratory and fun? Do we know? This is something to do with Chelsea.
I'll take the lead on. So making democracy celebratory and fun.
Yes.
Is getting up out of your seat.
And this is an actual award. This is an actual award, right? That you can. Okay.
Yes. We won the SLSV award for making voting fun. Okay. For student populations and other people as well.
Sure.
Okay. And making voting fun, like I said, is dancing, is getting up out of your seat,
me about it.
Is doing a little ditty. Okay. All right. We did a TikTok challenge behind Rock the Polls. Again, you can go to YouTube and you can look that up. Rock the Polls. That's a collaboration between the Democracy Fellows and Corey Babes. It's high quality. It's fun. It's infectious.
Okay.
So yes. The answer your question, Sylvia. Go ahead. Give them that resounding.
Right.
Yes.
Well, yes. Yeah. No, I mean, I think fun is so important and underutilized. Fun can be thoughtful, and you can be thoughtful while having fun. And I think it's an important thing to have, because otherwise you end up with that kind of like seriousness, dauntingness of our issues and our parties. And I think you can do both. I think you can understand the seriousness of an issue, but also have fun and have that as a way to engage people. And I think it also invites community bonding, and it's just a way to grow as any part of organization. Right,
because politics can be viewed as unfun.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So people, 30. I don't know how many things are less fun than politics in the minds of many 22-year-olds, right? So, I mean, I could probably doing laundry, I think, would be up there.
Dishes.
Pickleball, right. Dishes, things of that nature. But nonetheless, so you're almost right. There's a many-faceted way to do politics, and that is build it sort of around the community that's already existing. And you can bring it in by being intentional, as you've said, Donte, and unintentional, like you were saying, Sylvia. You just sort of talk about these issues, and the personal is in the 70s, the women's movement, the phrase was the personal is political. And that can be, I think, as both of you are saying here, that can be true for all groups, all individuals, that we can view it that way. What is there any other advice you could give to me, to the party, other than dancing? And I'm going to go home and work on this tonight. But what else is there to reach out to, younger people?
I'd say just take the young people seriously. I think there's sometimes like a tendency to talk down to people, not just in the party, but just in politics in general. And these kids are coming up with serious issues and concerns about their future.
Very true.
And reaching out to them as adults and as people, as peers that you want to talk to, I think is really important.
Well, it's interesting, and I'll get to you, Donte, to answer that. Right before this podcast, I interviewed Chris Ronayne. So those watching the podcast at home want to know why I'm wearing the same shirt. That is why. But one of the things that he and I talked about was how Chris and I are both Gen X, and how your generation, and I'm assuming, I don't know your ages, but you're younger than me for sure, is that the intolerance of intolerance that your generation stands for. And it's really remarkable And how does that come along? And do you think enough people are intolerant of this intolerance, but still don't vote?
I love it, Brock.
Yeah, thank you, Jones.
I love it.
Sylvia, do you have? Yeah,
that's a really interesting question. I think that this generation is really great at identifying the problem and calling out and seeking the problem. And we're moving towards problem solving, but it's a process. And I think one of the things is educating people about how do you solve that problem? What are the avenues you have, especially young people who haven't gotten as involved in politics or in workplace where you might encounter like those kind of ideas. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that would be my take on it. But that's a deep question.
No, I know. I do want to say that the future is in great hands if young people as thoughtful as you with the legit thoughtfulness. This has been really remarkable. Now, again, Issue 5 is on the ballot.
Yes.
Today's the first day of early voting. We have through November 7th. Which way should people vote on Issue 5? Do you have any ideas?
Whichever way they want, as long as they do vote.
Oh, good point. That's a good point.
I think you should vote in the best interest of your community.
Oh, okay. All right.
And that's all I'll say about that.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you both so much. It's been a real treat and honor, and I look forward to future conversations with the both of you, I hope. And Donte, thank you for the familiarity.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you both very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.